Hello, everyone. Our guest today is Khyrunnisa A. She was a professor of English at All Saints College and is a full-time writer. She has written a lot of books for older kids. In fact, she is the creator of the comic character Butterfingers and went on to write the Butterfingers series for Penguin Random House. Ma'am's first book for adults came out in 2019 called Tongue in Cheek, The Funny Side of Life. It is published by Westland Publications and is now available on Amazon. Welcome, ma'am, to the show. Ma'am, before we begin, we'd love to hear you read out something from Tongue in Cheek, please.
All right. Thank you very much for your warm words of welcome, and it's a great pleasure to be here on this show. So you want me to read a little bit from Tongue in Cheek? Okay,
yes, please
do that. But first, let me wear my glasses, the better to see what I'm reading.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, Tongue in Cheek is a collection of articles that appeared in the Hindu Metro Plus. I had a humor column in the Hindu Metro Plus,
Right.
And it became very popular. It ran from 2013 to 2018, and it was the readers there who asked me, why don't you compile these articles? So that's when this idea came to me, and I approached Westland. They were happy to bring out this book. So that is this book, right?
Right.
So here is one. I'll just read out a little bit from this piece, which is titled The Trouble with Eggs.
Right.
I always thought carrots were good for your eyes. So I began to devour carrots at a rate that would have given rabbits a complex if they only knew. I didn't care much for the taste, but munched gamely along and was just beginning to develop a taste for the healthy veggies when there appeared this friend who announced it wasn't carrots that are good for your eyes, but eggs. Eggs? I was surprised. Exactly, she grinned. The whole egg or just the white? I asked. The egg, especially its yolk, is often the bête noire of health faddists. The egg, the whole egg, and nothing but the egg, she declared, her eyes shining behind her glasses. Clearly, the eggs hadn't begun working the magic on her eyes yet. She added, I have been studying eggs. I thought she was studying economics, but I let that pass. It's a complete meal, the wannabe ologist concluded. Likely, I thought, considering it goes on to become a full-grown chicken, and if a chicken isn't a complete meal, then what is? This satisfying inference already set my mouth watering. I no longer wish to chicken out of eating an egg. Still, I wanted further clarification. What about the cholesterol in the yolk? I persisted. Health gurus have been shouting themselves hoarse about the villainous egg yolk for some time. Oh, well, the turncoats have changed their tune like this, she said, snapping her fingers to show how fickle they were. Yolk is the hero now. If you value your eyesight, go for eggs. Don't take a jaundiced view of the yellow. There is good cholesterol in egg yolk. Believe me, it will raise your HDL levels. Her words raised my hopes of a delicious meal anyway. And then it goes on. Okay, so that is just the introduction.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's truly tongue-in-cheek, actually. So, ma'am, so what made you get into writing? You've been a university level teacher. Yeah. So was that a natural progression?
I wouldn't call it a natural progression, but what happened was it was purely accidental. See, I was teaching English, and if you are teaching English because you love English, which is what happened for me. I love English. I love books, reading. These are all my passions. English literature, books, reading. So I wanted to become a teacher of English, actually. And I did become that, which is very good because it's nice to have as a career something that you really love. And I was totally absorbed in my career of teaching English because it kept me in touch with books. But anyone who loves reading, literature, language will like writing too. I'm sure if you liked literature, you would like the experiments in writing. When you are in school, you have your creative writing, composition, you call it. So those things were happening, but there was never this desire uh, to become a writer. When I was teaching too, that was not really happening. But of course, when I was teaching itself, I started writing. But the way it happened was purely accidental. We used to get this magazine called Tinkle at home, which you're familiar with. And my son was very small, for him, not for us, though we all used to read it. And so one day I noticed they were asking for entries. I saw this advertisement in Tinkle. At that time, it was produced by India Book House. So there was this India Book House annual competition for all India competition for adult writers of children's fiction. Somehow, when I saw that, it spoke to me, you could say. I thought, why not send a story? Just like that. And I decided that I fit in, I mean, all those rules that they had delineated. I was fine. I'm adult. I thought I must be adult enough. You should be able to write a story of 3,000 words, not more than 3,000 words. I thought, okay, I'll restrain myself. And I decided I will send an entry, and I sent an entry. All right. This was all just like that. It was not at all a desire to write, and this is the first step kind of thing, in which case I would have started long back. This is, when you could say when I was a little before I was 40. So that is not when a person who wants to badly want to become a writer takes the first step. So I wrote that story, and that story got the second prize, which made me very pleased. Okay, All India competition, you get the second prize, which is not too bad, I thought. And it would have stopped with that, and you wouldn't be here asking me these questions if it were not for something else that happened, which the particular lady concerned keeps telling me, please don't drag me into it during your interviews. But I said, this is the truth. So what is this truth? This lady was the assistant editor of Tinkle. And one day, this lady, she was a stranger, two strangers came to my house, a lady and her husband. And she introduced herself, and she is the assistant editor of Tinkle. Well, my eyes popped out. What is an editor doing in my house? And she said, of course, she's come from Bombay to Trivandrum, not to see me, okay? Her in-laws are here. But when she said that she was coming to Trivandrum in Tinkle, they really liked my story, apparently. They found it a very fun story, an exuberant story. And they actually told her, if it is possible, why don't you go and look up this person who wrote it. You can't call me a writer even, just one straight story, and find out if she's as lively and bubbly as her story. And she came. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. And when we got talking, of course, we found a lot of common friends, common interests. Then she asked me, are you sending the entry to the next year's competition? And I said, no. So then she was quite surprised. She said, why not? I said, I've already got a prize, looking very pleased. And she said, your ambitions are pathetic. You have to write. You must write, she said. Somehow I never thought of writing again. And it was just one of those things that I did. And when she told me you should write, she said, you go with the quality of writing, you write well. You should write, she said. And that is what kindled the spark, you could say, because it's not every day that editors come to a person's house and say, please write. So I thought, okay, I will write. And I sent an entry for the next year's competition, which won the first prize. And then it started, okay? So it may have started accidentally, but even then it was not done in a very earnest way. I used to send these entries. And then I got this column. Indian Express asked me to write a column for them about books. I did that. And then in 2006, Tinkle asked me to create a regular character for the magazine. And that's when I said, look, the first story I wrote was Butterfingers. And somehow that character had a special appeal for me, was living in my head, you could say. And I said, I've already created and for your magazine. So that associate editor, Luis Fernandez, he was not there at that time. So he said, I don't know about this character. You send me 2 stories. And I sent them, and he said, okay, because he wanted to see if there is enough in the character to take the, it's a series, right? So there should be the potential for it to progress. So I said, he was happy with that, and that was how what I call the second innings of Butterfingers started. And that also became hugely popular. And when I had enough stories, I approached Penguin because the copyright of the longer version is with me. The comic strip version is with the publishers of the comic strip, that is Machitra Katha now. And Penguin also, the editor, liked the stories. That's how she got back to me when I submitted it and said, we like it very much. We like the character Butterfingers. We like his friends. We like the atmosphere. We like the background. We like. And I knew something was coming. That but was coming. But we don't want short stories. We don't want to publish short stories by a single person. Can you write a novel? Now that was something. The offer is coming from that side. So I thought, okay, it's, my writing is going in some direction. I should not let go this opportunity. And I said, okay, let me try. And again, I went back to the first Butterfingers story, which I felt had enough meat in it for expansion. And I I sent the synopsis. She said, fine, send me 2 chapters. Send them, fine. And you know what happened? She sent me the contract. In 6 months, I was supposed to send the book. So that was how this book came out. This novel, my first novel, House at Butterfingers. And then I became what you can call a writer. That is, it's a rather long story, Anna, but it will.
But an interesting one, nevertheless. A very interesting one. Nevertheless. So that, I suppose, answers the question, why children's writing. I suppose it was more of a chance. I mean, it was more of chance than choice. I mean, given the choice, would you have gone in for children's writing, or would you have opted for?
Yeah, it's a very nice question that you asked me, because most people ask me, they just assume that I went into children's writing because I wanted to do children's writing. As you got the right word, it was by chance. It so happened that I started with a children's story, and then you kind of get stuck in it. You know how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Had I started with an adult book, I would have got stuck in that. I would not even have thought of writing a book for children. So I was writing for children, and then, it was going on that it was in that direction that it was heading. So it was quite by chance that I started writing for children, but I started enjoying it because it's very nice to write for children when you get the response from the children. See, writing is only part of it. Yes. After that, the readers, they are the ones who complete this whole process. So when they read and tell you, we loved your book, we love Butterfingers, we find ourselves in Butterfingers, how did you think of that? That enthusiasm that children have, it's very different from the enthusiasm of older people. It's very special. And I started enjoying writing for children. Yeah. But of course, I did not, even now when people say you're a children's writer, I would like to consider myself just as a writer. Because this kind of compartmentalization, I really don't think needs to be there. Because you're writing for children doesn't mean you should write only for children. Because you're writing for adults doesn't mean you need write only for adults. Because you see a lot of writers doing both and doing both very well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, about the characters that you've created in these books, Butterfingers, for instance, what were the influences, or what actually led you to create these characters? What was the whole thought process like when you created these characters?
Yeah, again, I'll have to hark back to the first story that I wrote for the competition, which I told you I wrote just like that, but you don't just send an entry for a competition just like that. Because when you write, you really want your story to stand out. You hope your story will be better, different than other people's, different from other people's stories. So I thought I should write a sports-based story. And because there aren't too many sports-based stories for children. See, the children's thing is happening because I'm writing for Tinkle, right? So then I thought, okay, humor. Humor is something I love. I always love humor. I enjoy reading humorous books. Woodhouse is my all-time favorite, P.G. Woodhouse. And though I read all kinds of books, I have a weakness for humor books. My hand will go, you give me 5 books and I'll take a look and I'll go first for the humorous book. So I really love humor. And even when I used to write these in class, in school, when we had these writing compositions, I used to try and bring in some kind of humor. into what I was writing. So it was there in me, and I thought I will write a humorous book. So now I've decided two things. One is sports, one it should be humorous. And I thought I'll go for cricket because I know like almost 99.9% of Indians, cricket is very, you know how close,
Yes.
how close to the heart cricket is, how passionate we are about cricket. I've always been following cricket. My whole family follows cricket. So I thought I'll write a cricket-based story, like other sports also, but cricket is. And then I thought, okay, see, I am the youngest of 8 children at home. And there's a lot of fun at home, and also you need to stand up for yourself. And Butterfingers was something that is a word that was constantly used at home. It's not something that I created. Okay, Butterfingers as a word existed in the English language, I think, from the 17th century. There is someone called Markham who wrote a book called The English Housewife, where he talks about the characteristics of a housewife. And a housewife should not be butterfingered. All right, housewife should be clean. Housewife should be that. Of course, all the feminists will be up in arms. How dare he do all this? But at that time too, they had certain things, certain characteristics that a housewife should have. One of them was she should not be butterfingered, meaning she should not drop things. Same meaning as it has now. Though a lot of people believe it was Charles Dickens who first used the word butterfingers in Pickwick Papers. He also used it the same meaning. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that at home, when somebody drops something or when someone is clumsy, we call that person Butterfingers. So Butterfingers is a commonly used word at home. And then it struck me, just like that, why not have a character in the story who is butterfingered? Because if it's a cricket story, you can drop a catch, you can change the match, you can do so many idiotic things. And that is how I thought of Butterfingers. And I gave, for the first story, my character's name was Mukesh. Okay, Butterfingers, who was nicknamed Butterfingers. Nobody's going to have a real name Butterfingers. And that happened. But when Tinkle asked me to create a regular character, and I brought back Butterfingers, I wanted to change the name. See, my son's name is Amar, and my son would never allow me to use his name in any of my stories. But I thought, let me see if I can get his consent to use his name for Butterfingers. And I asked him, and I seriously think he may not have been listening to me. Anyway, he nodded his head in some way, which I interpreted to mean yes. And I changed Mukesh to Amar. And I made it Amar Sen. That is how I got Amar, also known as Butterfingers, in Tinkle. But when Tinkle when Butterfingers became or evolved as a character in these novels and short stories that I wrote for Puffin or Penguin Random House. Puffin is the children's imprint of Penguin Random House. And then I changed, I do not know why I did this. The comic, Butterfingers, is 14 years and in class 9. In the books, I demoted him. I made him 13 years old, and Amar Sen became Amar Kishan. I changed his father. Okay, so Amar Kishan. This is the change I made. But you were asking me about the names. So what I did was I took the easy way out. I took the names of my son's friends as the names of the characters. So all those, Kiran, Ajay, Kishore, Jairam, Eric, Thomas, Arjun, Minu, these are all his friends. But I told them, look, it's only your names I have borrowed, not your characters. Otherwise, they'll sue me. So that is how, but the characters are just out of my imagination. I mean, they're characteristics. Names are the names of my son's friends. So that was how I thought of those names.
Now, children's literature, basically, I mean, we talk about, inculcating values and, teaching children lessons. So how far do you think children's literature, teaches values, or how far are they successful in inculcating any sense of value or any sense of belonging or anything positive in children? Or is children's literature today just a whole bunch of characters and
No, no,
situations?
no, 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 no. I think every book is written with a lot of responsibility. So just like any other cultural phenomenon, literature also has a role to play in forming the character of everybody, including children. Because even the books that we read, older people read, every book is changing us. Every book is teaching us something. We are not going to books because we want to learn something that is going to affect us morally or whatever, but that is the purpose of literature. Purpose of literature is actually to teach you, but it teaches you through enjoyment of whatever has been written. You enjoy what you are reading and some changes happen. So I wouldn't say that inculcating, these values are not there. They're very much there. Earlier, if you look at children's literature, in fact, when children's literature started, even in English literature, if you look at it, I think by 18th century, the kind of books they were writing was mostly moralistic books. They wanted to teach morals. It was so much of, there was so much of talking down to children. Children's literature was only about telling them how to behave, was telling them what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, what to do, what not to do. So that was how it was. It took a little while for children's literature to blossom into something which children would really enjoy reading. And nobody likes to have morals thrust down their throats. You know how when we had moral science classes, and even when the timetable is given and you say afternoon first period moral science, you groan. This is the way in which people look at anything that is overtly moralistic. But every bit of writing teaches something, tells you something. And I can tell you that there is no writing which stands for something that is bad or evil or something that is violent. If there is a lot of violence in the book too, what it is teaching you is that all this violence, finally there is some kind of punishment. Somebody is paying for all that. So that these are things that you are not aware of when you're reading, because you're reading only for the enjoyment of the experience of reading. You love reading. It gives you pleasure, whatever the kind of reading you're doing. Similarly with children's literature too. See, these values are there. And even now you find quite a bit of literature which is to do with moral values. Very obviously teaching a child what to do. You remember, I don't know whether you had to write outline story when you were in school, when you had to expand a story, Okay, so we had...
Yes, sort of. Yes, I remember. Yes,
you remember?
yes.
Yeah. So in those, if you look at the way the teacher would teach you what to do about an outline story. Of course, some people used to use it as fill in the blanks, all the items, all the dashes, they would just fill something and give. Absolutely, but you remember that. Yes. So we were told we must write a title, and then we must divide it into paragraphs. You must think of a story, and you bring in some conversation. But finally they'll say, at the end of the story, you must write moral of the story.
Yes, I do, I remember.
So moral it's very important for everybody, moral. Even now there are people, when we have these events, I have parents or older people asking me, what is the moral of your story, of your book, Butterfingers? And then I tell them, look, I really don't believe in using my books to teach morals. But if you read my books, you will get a lot from it. Children will learn about generosity, camaraderie, kindness, then impartiality, respect for people. All that is woven into the fabric of the book. So you don't have to tell them, look, this is the moral, this story is teaching this story is teaching that. I think a lot of joy is removed when you have a story which is all out to correct you, all out to teach you something, all out to change you. But the values are always there. I would say that whether the books were whether it was the books in the past or the books currently being written, whether it was for children or for adults, all of them are actually indirectly inculcating values.
Right. Now, coming to today's, publications, today's kids are not habituated to reading print books or publications. They're more used to handheld devices or electronic devices to read. So do you think printing books for children is on its way out, or how do you see
No,
this whole situation?
no, I don't think so at all. In fact, I would beg to differ because I really don't think that children read more online. They're forced to read because classes are like that. There is a lot more online stuff that is happening. But I do find that children prefer reading um, actual books, physical books. And there is something, this tactile, this touch is very, very important for a child. And neurologists, if they are to be believed, they say that reading the page, reading a book is definitely going to do wonders to your brain more than online. And reading, writing, actual writing, these are all very important. More and more people are realizing that we are losing a lot by depending too much, by this over dependence on the screen and online and using our fingers to type things. It's really, really bad. So I wouldn't say that print books are going out of fashion at all. What I find is that there are, especially children's books, you find the print books are more in demand than online. That's what I find in India. I don't know how it is in Dubai, whether they are encouraged to read books on
No, you're right.
devices.
Children's books, to a large extent, yes, the printed version is preferred,
Yeah, yeah,
over
because
the electronic ones.
yeah, because they prefer that, they hold they want to hold the book, they want to turn the
Absolutely. Yeah,
pages,
yeah,
the
yeah.
pictures that are there, the colors that are there. Of course, now they are trying to make everything very attractive online too. They're trying their
Absolutely.
best to
Absolutely.
make it a proper substitute for the actual version. I mean, the physical book, but it isn't really working that way. If you ask a child, what would you prefer? I think the child will go for the book. But older people prefer, for them, it's a question of space. Books are taking up a lot of space. So that way, you can say that the device is better because you can store so many books in your device. In the Kindle, you can have so many titles that are there. But I really don't think that the physical book will disappear. Who was it? Like someone said, just like shark. The shark was always there. The shark continues to remain. I know it's a bad comparison, but can't have the book being compared, physical book being compared to a shark. But it's only in the fact that it is able to sustain itself, the fact that it is long lasting, the fact that it has not given up. These are the things that make it proper comparison. Anyway,
Right.
it
Hmm.
will remain.
Hmm.
So that's what
And
I feel.
do you think in that sense, do you think it's actually important to read print books as opposed to, Kindle or any of
Yes,
those handheld devices?
yes,
Yes.
definitely. I think it's very important to read print books. In fact, I would like people to encourage children to read print books. And see, one way in which children start reading is when they watch parents read, older people read, because children are
Right.
basically very imitative by nature. So if they come from a house which has books, so think of a house with books, think of a house with only the Kindle. See, there's nothing attractive for the child. But if there are books, the child sees the parents read books. The child's curiosity is roused. The child wants to read, wants to know what is inside that. And then they become good readers. So that is how reading is fostered. Reading is nurtured. Reading is encouraged. It's the same in schools when you have libraries. Whereas, a library with cupboards full of books, it's a very attractive thing. Whereas an online, a device, you can't really find it unless you make an effort to do that. And even then, it's not attractive. See, you might say don't judge a book by its cover, but it's a cover that attracts you first when you pull it out and look at it. Then you read the blurb. There's a process before you read a story, a book. So I really don't think that one should discourage a child from reading actual books. In fact, you should encourage a child to read physical books because as I told you, neurologists believe that it makes changes to their brains which benefit the child.
Right. Now, earlier, when everything was in the physical realm, we used to have children's clubs and all that used to encourage children to read and discuss what they had read.
Yeah.
So do you think any such things or any such initiatives are there online today, or are there children's clubs, or what? How does it all happen now?
Now I think it is, there are many more clubs, I would say, online than there were actually. See, what happened is that with the pandemic, people are not able to meet.
Right.
And then the concerns rose. In schools, at home, people started getting worried that children are not reading enough. They're getting stuck to devices. But also, it's very ironic. It's the same device that is keeping you connected to people. So what do? You use that device, but you use it in the best way possible. So there are lots of clubs. There are many, many more clubs now, online clubs, I would like to say, than the other kind. Because if you have an actual club, you will need to go somewhere and meet. That's not possible any longer. Of course, that experience is any day better than the online experience, because it's always nice to be in a group of people physically present and swapping whatever they have to say, ideas about books or their opinions and so on. But this one online is, they all meet online. They have various books. I know about so many book clubs that are there for children. And there are lots of book clubs for adults also. There are lots of people who are really interested in books. And many of these book clubs may have been started by, some of them are started by writers too. There are some that are started by school teachers, then by librarians. Librarians have such a huge role to play in this whole game of reading. And they are really thriving. And that is one way in which you can get children interested in books, because reading is so important. We have to see that our children read. It's become a necessity now.
Absolutely. Now, you started writing for adults also.
Yeah.
Now, how is this different from writing for kids as far as, the creative satisfaction goes, or how do you find the whole experience of writing for adults?
Yeah, writing for adults, actually, it's different in the sense, as there are several things which are easier when you're writing for adults. There are lots of people who think it's easier to write for children, but when you're writing for children, there are some restraints on you. There are, so you have to be careful about the kind of vocabulary you use, the kind of themes that you bring into your works, the kind of language you use, the kind of interaction that you write about, and all kind of things you describe. Everything, there are these invisible barriers. You have to be conscious of that when you are writing. Whereas when you're writing for an older person, those are not there. Any barriers that are there are the barriers that you yourself put on yourself. I will not write about this. I don't want to write about this. This is what I'm good at. It's not the public that is telling you, or your readers, who are telling you what to write, what not to write. You are deciding. You're the person in charge. Whereas when it comes to children's literature, of course, you're the person in charge, all right, because you have decided this is what you're going to write. But there are certain other things where you can't really overstep limits. There are limits for you. For children, for adults, not like that. But for me, what I find is that that way it gives you a little more freedom. But then my books, what somebody said is they are very clean in the sense that I don't really write about extremely adult stuff. In fact, I remember when I first told a friend that I have written a book for adults, then he asked, "You've written a book for adults, which are those pages?" I said, "What pages are you talking about?" And then I'm so sorry to disappoint you, if you're looking for something like 50 Shades of Grey, that's not going to be there in my book. So it's not that kind. It's only for grown-ups because there are different types of things that are written about. But my two books for adults, neither of them are novels. Both are very personal, actually. Tongue-in-cheek is about supposedly the misadventures of an urban woman, but the urban woman is me. It's mostly things that have happened to me because that is what Hindu wanted. When they asked me to write this column, they wanted a personal column, they wanted a fun column, a humorous column about incidents that happened. Then they gave me a free hand. I could write about anything that happened to me. So I used to, whatever happened, I'm always happy when something unusual happens. And then, because now I have a theme to write an article. So that's how it is. And the next book that's coming out is my second book for adults. Next month it will be coming out. It's a travel, it's a fun travelogue. Again, it's a personal. So I have not written a novel yet, which is when your question will become really pertinent.
I got you. Now,
Yeah.
the point is, given, going forward, would you prefer to focus more on children's books or books for adults? I mean, since you've written both.
I think I would like to do both actually, because I really have a lot of readers among children. See, Butterfingers has kind of established itself. And there are lots of children who really love the series. So Butterfingers and my publishers also, they're also happy with the way the books are doing. So they would also like me to continue with the series. So that is going to happen anyway. And I have also got used to writing stories for children, and I'm enjoying that. There is this magazine called Dimdima. I don't know whether you've heard of that. It is a Mumbai-based magazine, a Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan magazine. Okay. And they have been asking me to write stories for their magazine. And I've been doing that maybe from 2012 or 9 or 10. I really don't know, but for a long time. And they asked me to, almost every month they used to, the editor there was Meera Nair. She used to keep on asking me, where's your story, where's your story? And I'm very grateful to her for that, because I wrote a lot of different kinds of stories, not Butterfingers type at all. And I really enjoyed them. A lot of animal stories. So after that, I have brought out 2 collections of animal stories, which first appeared in Dimdima. Of course, I wrote 2 or 3 new stories also. I didn't want them all to be from the magazine. So you have a few new stories too. So what I'm saying is that I'm enjoying writing for children, these animal stories, writing about those things which interest me, village stories, all kinds of stories. The Dimdim also gives me a free hand. It's a lovely magazine, and I really wish it became more popular. It's kind of, see, you have not heard of it. Whereas you've heard of Tinkle.
Yes.
Yeah. So they should do something to make it more popular, but they are happy with it being a Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan magazine. All the Bhavan schools, they get the books, the copies of the magazine. So it's not really gone to bookstores. You don't find in any bookstore or any shop, Dimdima. I keep telling the editor, do something about it, yours, because it has a lot of, everything that a child would be interested in, it has. It's got stories, it's got fun facts, it's got comics, it's got some do-it-yourself, a lot of everything together is there in this book. So what I wanted to tell you is that I would like to write that, and I would like to write for adults too. So I don't want to give up either, because I'm enjoying both in 2 different ways.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, finally, in a world where the reading habit is dying or set to be dying, how do you think we can actually bring back that interest and make people read more, especially the younger generation, who find it difficult to actually sit down and get hold of a book and read? Yes. As a writer, how do you think we can bring them to?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. It's a big challenge, especially now. See, earlier it was when the television, television began to lure children away from the page, everyone was alarmed. But somehow, I would give a lot of credit to Rowling, because I think 97 her book came out, Harry Potter, the first one, Philosopher's Stone, and somehow whatever it was, we really don't know how this magic was worked, but everybody started reading books, and reading became hugely popular. So you can say that the challenge of the television was kind of watered down by the fact that reading once again was established and children started enjoying it. But now what's happened is online has every classes are online. So what parents did was they used to see that children did not spend too much time on the screen, at least responsible parents, you could say. There are also parents who will say, look into the screen while I do my work. It's very easy, convenient for them to do that because the child is very happy to look into the screen. But responsible parents did that. But now what happened is the classes are also online. So they were forced to give the mobile phone which they were keeping away from the child. They were forced to give it to the child. So once you give that to the child, it's very difficult to limit what they are watching. It's very difficult to censor what you're watching. They're very clever. Children are very clever. They know ways and means of doing stuff which parents do not know. They're very savvy with technology and what to do. Even little ones, they know what to do. So that is why it's become a huge challenge. What do you do now? How do you get children to read? So there is this huge concern. I have noticed this concern. As a writer, I'm concerned because I'm writing books. I want children to read, but I don't want them to read only my books. I want them to read. Now, I know the kind of joy I got and I'm still getting out of reading. I don't want them to be cheated out of that because it is something that is it grows on you, reading. So what I think concerted effort must be made to get children to read. And for that, the people responsible, I would say, are the parents first. Then parents or whoever is in the house where they are growing up. And then school, teachers, librarians, peers, all of them have a role to play. And I think what a parent must do is to see that the child reads when the child is small.
Right.
And right now, if the child is older and is now concentrating more on the screen, because we know the advantages of the screen, we know the distractions of the screen, we know the immediate gratification that the screen provides. So because of that, naturally, when so few demands are made on your mind, why would you want to take a book and read where you have to sit quietly, imagine something, when you can watch a movie, play a game, which is so quick? So you can't blame the child for opting to do something which is easy and which amuses them quickly. So what we have to do is parents have to be responsible, older people have to be responsible and make them understand without forcing them to read. See, you can't force anybody. Don't tell the child, see, these are the advantages of reading, these are the disadvantages of online or of the screen, so you must read. The moment you say you must read, the child will decide, I am not going to read. You know how we all were growing up.
Yes.
You say something don't do, you will do. Say do, you won't do. That's it's the way the child's mind works. Can't blame the child. So what you should do is you should also be smart. You should be clever. You should be diplomatic. You should do it in a fun way. Make the child interested by discussing the story. Leave the book there. Come to a part of it and leave it. And then you could ask somebody else to talk about the book. The teacher can talk about the book. See, teacher has every right to talk about a book. That's her job, right? So she does that and instills this curiosity in the child. What's going to happen next? And once that happens, then once the child gets hooked on to reading, understands how it gives you lasting pleasure, they will be readers forever. I don't think a person who is a reader will stop reading. They may have those frequent intervals when they do not read for whatever reason, but they go back to it. So I think that is, it all depends on how responsibly the older person manages things. You have to manage this whole thing because it is a real problem getting children to read. So unless it is tackled, don't consider it as a huge problem. It is just a challenge. if you do that, and then you discuss with the child a story and ask them, how would you be in such a situation? Would you have done what this character did? Some way in which you can kindle the child's interest in what is there between the pages of the book. These are all words. They're just reading words. That's why I keep on talking about how it is just 26 letters and some exclamation marks, but they take you into different worlds. It's magical, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is something we have to admire, that this has happened. And you get the child to understand that. Once they do that, and don't ban them or prevent them from reading, from playing a computer game. Don't do that also. One should never be cruel about it. Then give time for everything so that the child reads, and the sedate activity will be very good for the child. I really think people are bothered about it, and measures are being taken in schools to see that children read. I see it happening. They're really concerned. And once that concern is there, I think we can be optimistic that children will will read, continue to read.
Right, absolutely. That was lovely talking to you, ma'am. I wish I could, go on talking, because this is such an interesting subject. It's a subject that's close to my heart as well. But we are running out of time. It was lovely talking to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was lovely.
We will have more of these conversations.
Yes.
Your books as they come out, we will, talk about them as well.
Yeah, thank you. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
And happy New Year to you.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you, and wish you the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Bye.